Welcome to another book club episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I am your host, Megan, and my lovely fellow bookworm co-host is...
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Excellent, welcome. So if you heard book club and had a minor panic attack, please don't worry. You're welcome to read along, but you definitely don't have to. In fact, you're more than welcome to just come and hang out here and listen to us gab about the book this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Sometimes when it comes to book club, I really want to know what the book suggests without having to actually read it. But then I come to book club and I feel like a book club fraud because I showed up and I didn't read. And then I feel like I shouldn't say anything, but I want to listen. And it's a whole thing. There shall be none of that here. If you're randomly just catching us for the first time, we also drop episodes every Tuesday for our regular progressive secular homeschool topics and things around that. But our Thursday drops are specifically book club.
Yeah, so secular and progressive, what exactly does that mean? Well, it means we don't weave God or Bible verses into our podcast or our curriculum suggestions. It also means that we believe Black Lives Matter, love is love, trans rights and women's rights are human rights, no human being is illegal, and so much more. So if those statements have resonated with you, welcome. You have found your people.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so this week we are still working our way through Debbie Reber's book, Differently Wired. I don't know, we're like on our 17th episode of it or something, but one of these days, we're getting close, actually. We are almost done. I think we have 2 more weeks after this, realistically, given how much we have to talk about each one of these tilts that we're going on. But for this week, we are discussing tilts 13 and 14. So let's dive in.
There you go. So tilt to 13 is about aligning with your partner. I will personally say I don't have a ton of notes on this section because I'll just kind of start out with a disclaimer. I am married, but I solo parent like 99.999% of the time because of my husband's job. So she keeps talking about like there's a thing in here about having like a daily recap with your spouse. And I'm like, some days we are barely even able to connect with one another. We're not in the same city, state, country half the time. So I have fewer notes on this section because it didn't quite resonate with me. I'm basically parenting our kids on my own most of the time.
Yeah, it's not to that extent in my world, but I am definitely in charge of the kid, generally speaking, right? And I'm in charge of all of the homeschooling for the most part. And so I definitely share all of the decisions that I'm making and oftentimes try to talk through things with my parenting partner. But for the most part, he's like, yeah, okay. And then if you ask him like a day later what we discussed and what he agreed to, he's like, oh, we didn't talk about that. Like just completely right. But it was not high on his priority list because he trusts me, right? I will put that out there. He trusts me and he thinks that it's, going well. He has no big concerns. So he's far more worried about what's happening at work and the people he doesn't trust there, right? So we'll see. But we're going to cover it. We'll talk about it. And so, like Meagan said, it's called Align with Your Partner. And she just starts out this section on page 203 talking about disruptive behavioral disorder, not otherwise specified, and oppositional defiance disorder. If you're reading along with us and you read those sections and you were a little like, I'm just going to say, like, she says a lot about it, right? And for me, it's a mixed bag. She talks about how in like 2013, it was often believed that it was like brought on or exacerbated by parenting styles. And it's one of those things, like it's not that simple, right? I think like many health and neurological things, it's maybe like the word she said, exacerbated by certain things or situations, but that doesn't mean that it didn't exist beforehand, right? If you're a really strict parent, it's probably going to cause a kid who doesn't want to fall in line to rebel even more, but it doesn't mean that it's not A plus B equals C. So I'll just put that out there. And then she then goes on to say that she doesn't even necessarily think it should be a diagnosis anymore. I don't know much about it, I'm not necessarily sure I agree with this thought. I have some friends who have found this diagnosis helpful in their parenting journey and figuring out what to do and what steps to take. And so, it's that thing. I think knowledge is power. And if you take that diagnosis away, maybe it's a little harder to find specific knowledge for the specific things. But again, it's not something that I have much, really hardly any firsthand personal experience with. So I just want to put that out there. If you read that section and you're like, oh no, like it's an interesting section. It's a mixed bag section.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting food for thought. I don't operate in this world. We both have kids with plenty of alphabet letters attached to them, right? And acronyms with all of their diagnoses, but this is not one that I can have in my household for sure. But I thought it was interesting. There's a quote here that says, we need to look beyond an ODD label, oppositional defiance disorder label, to see that these behaviors are a stress response and are not due to a bad kid, poor parenting, not enough discipline, not enough consistency, but a child who has stress in their brain-body connection. And so I thought that that was interesting, just food for thought, right? That it's a kiddo who's dysregulated and maybe can't figure out how to express that. And so it comes out in this way. And maybe that, it'd be interesting to kind of fast forward like 75 years and see what things are there, right? I mean, like I'm reading this book in a book club that I lead, and there's a whole conversation in there about leprosy. It was set in 1925, I think it is. And, and it's like, obviously 100 years on, we know so much more about leprosy and things like that, right? So this is kind of one of those things that'll be interesting to see later, where you'll be like, it's either going to be like, can you believe we once thought ODD was a real thing? Or or it'll be like, can you believe we once questioned that this was a real thing, right? It'll be, I wish I had like a time machine to go forward and see how this one shapes up as we learn more about neurodivergence.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. Because I think that's the thing, right? I think in the US, it's not an official diagnosis. I think you can like get it, but it's not like a DSM-5 diagnosis or something like that. Like I said, again, not my area of expertise by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, so the next section is called The Great Divide. On 204, she's talking about the divide that often happens between parenting partners. And she's kind of giving examples, right? From like one parent going all in on trying to accommodate whatever kind of issues or struggles or behaviors are happening, while maybe the other one thinks the child just has behavioral issues, or maybe something less extreme where like one parent is just like personally not coping well. And, they're like busy paddling down the river called denial. Like, I think, whether this is happening in your own home or someone struggling with some variation of this, we have probably all seen this play out, right? Usually more than once. And I also think that it's really too bad because the vast majority of the time, it's the kids who almost always suffer the most.
I jotted down really similar notes, right? Just kind of saying like, we've seen this so often where people are saying the primary parent who's with the kids all the time is usually the one who's kind of noticing these small things or these behavioral tendencies or these patterns. And, sometimes the other parent is like, you're reading too much into it, or I'm sure it's fine, or they'll outgrow it or something. And it can be really frustrating to parent in kind of environment where you're like, why don't you see what I'm seeing? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Or the like, just trust me and believe me. Like, I'm here all day long. I see this, like, please trust me and believe me. Can be hard. Okay. So the next section is called Closing the Gap. I have hit or miss notes through both of these tilts as well. But in 206, or on page 206, she is quoting an interview from Psychology Today, and it says, quote, "For some parents, the stress changes their relationship in a negative way. But based on our preliminary studies, the opposite can also be true. Some couples thrive and comment that they have become closer as a result of their unique experiences related to having a child on the autism spectrum disorder with an autism." Anyway, Yeah. I was just like, I don't know what. I doubt that there's anything particularly unique about that one specific diagnosis versus all the other alphabet soup out there. And maybe it brings couples together and makes them stronger. I'm not sure I know any of these couples. And I don't think I know any of them in real life, but if you are one of those lucky ones where you're like, this brought us together, totally made us stronger, like, good for you. I'm actually genuinely, like, I know that sounded snarky. I'm genuinely happy for you. I
Yeah.
don't know how it happened, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think for us it's been necessarily something that's driven us apart or brought us to, I don't know. It just, yeah, it didn't resonate for me because I was just kind of like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we have like a huge wedge between us. I do know couples that have huge wedges.
Yeah.
I know couples that have really struggled, but I certainly don't think that it like brought us together to become this like super tight parenting team, right? Like up in.
Yeah. I definitely can think I have one very good friend who their child's struggles have definitely been a huge wedge between them. So yeah, I see that more often than happy version.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry to be the bearer of
Okay.
bad news. It's like a really uplifting podcast.
Doing me like, I should have put a trigger warning at the beginning of this one. Okay, so the next section, yeah. So the next section was called Assess and Take Personal Responsibility. All right, so I pulled out kind of a long quote in this section. She says, quote, even in the best of relationships, there's bound to be imbalance. For those of us raising atypical kids, that imbalance can be exacerbated because of the extreme nature of our daily reality. Typically, one parent holds most of the cards because they're the one pushing for support, driving the child to appointments or activities, managing schedules, being that public face of the family, and leaving parenting books with dozens of earmarked pages lying around the house. I will raise my hand. I am guilty of that. She goes on to say, sometimes this is part of a shared division of labor. Both parents are on the same page about who does what, and it works. Other times, the less involved parent realizes they're not as engaged, but they're so relieved their partner has taken over that they happily retreat from the day to day. And I'm going to be honest, this is definitely like more the speed of my home, right? Just this general. I have it. My husband is really happy to like, yeah, okay, I generally agree with that. I'm generally on board. I think you're doing great. I think we have a great kid. And he will often tell me that he's positive if he was left in charge of the parenting, that the kid probably wouldn't be nearly as awesome as he is. And so, like, you're doing great. Keep at it. And, it's nice when your parenting partner is so supportive and all that. But every once in a while, it would also be nice to have someone pick up the slack a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I was laughing before when you were saying like you're having conversations and kind of like bouncing things off of each other and all that kind of stuff. Like, just like kind of keeping him in the loop. But I was like, my mom is my parenting partner, right? Like I have a husband, he fathered these children, but if I need to talk through something about, I'm not sure what I should do about XYZ, I go to my mom because my husband will oftentimes do what you're saying. He's super supportive and he'll just be like, you're doing great. I'm sure it'll be fine. Whatever you think is best works. And I'm like, yeah, but I need somebody to hash this out with and like make sure and he's like, whatever you think is best, I'm behind you. I've got you. And I'm okay. So thankfully I can get that from my mom. So it works. I mean, we're going to talk in the next tilt about finding your people and all that stuff. And I'm like, so my mom is my people. She's the one that I can kind of go to and be like, what do you think I should do here? And it works.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. You got to find what works. And
Mm-hmm.
your parenting partner doesn't have to be a spouse or even a romantic significant other. It can be whoever you have put in that position of helping with the things and bouncing the ideas off of. That's a totally
Mm-hmm.
valid way of doing it.
Yep.
All right. So she wraps up this section with a good list of food for thought questions. So I just wanted to read them because I thought they were pretty solid, but I was also too lazy to type them into my notes. So let me find them in the actual book. Okay, so they say, are you shouldering the bulk of responsibilities that come with meeting your child's unique needs? Or is it your partner? Do you sometimes feel like your family is divided into two teams, you and your child against your partner? Are you regularly checking out instead of checking in? How might you be contributing, consciously or subconsciously, to a dysfunctional relationship with your partner? Do you have a need to maintain control that's putting your partnership at a disadvantage? Sorry, that's putting your partner at a disadvantage. Do you and your partner work well together when tough stuff with your child arises? Do you regularly make the choice to not involve your partner? Just one of those. I thought it was like, yeah, it's generally like, yeah, just good food for thought. And I'm certainly not throwing stones, glass houses and all that jazz. So
Yeah. I had a funny anecdote that popped into my head when I read this. So the one that says, do you and your partner work well together when tough stuff with your child arises? And so we typically handle things so very differently. And so just generally in life, I'm a very like, you catch more bees with honey kind of person. And it's funny because sometimes we'll be needing to talk to somebody or try to negotiate something or whatever. And it's interesting. Like if we need to like hardcore negotiate something, I make him do it because he has no qualms about hardcore negotiation. And I can't do it. It's just not who I am. And then if we need to catch more bees with honey, he's like, you're much nicer than me. You go do that thing. Right. So that's like generally our dynamic. So it was funny because something happened with one of our kids one time. And it says like when tough stuff with your child arises. So something happened with one of our kids one time. Somebody was unfair to him at an activity. He was really upset, all this kind of stuff. And me, the catch more bees with honey person, was like, you point this guy out to me, right? Like, and I was just like, this is going to go down. And it was hilarious because my husband was like, hold on. And he went and had a conversation and was like, I know that was not your intention and blah, blah, blah. And he was so calm and he had the whole thing sorted out. And it was just so funny because I think I'll remember that forever because it was the one and only time that we role reversaled without talking about it or anything. And I was like, did you just catch more bees with honey when I was ready to like run this guy down with my car? And he was like, yeah, what just happened here? So like, whoa, it was like, talk about like the Parent Trap or Freaky Friday. Like that was like, we just completely like body swapped here for a moment. So I was thinking about that when I read it because I was like, typically that is not our style. We usually don't see eye to eye, but on the completely opposite side of things. And then that one day I was like, oh my goodness, what just happened here?
me.
So that guy's pretty happy that I didn't come talk to him that day.
Yeah. All right. So the next section is called See Your Partner with Compassion. Okay. So 209, I pulled out a quote. She says, although many of us are good at seeing others, friends, extended family, colleagues, even complete strangers, with compassion, the person closest to us, our partner, doesn't always get the same treatment. And I think that's one of those things. I think it's super true. I think that we need to be reminded of. For me, it's kind of like, that thing where kids are more likely to melt down with the parent they feel most safe with. And the same is with adults, right? Like adults, they vent and even blow up, right? Maybe at their partner over like work related stress that has nothing to do with their partner, but they can't actually blow up at their boss because they kind of like to keep their job. And so, like we do these things with the people that we know are always going to be there. And we don't necessarily we just don't remember to use the same kind of compassion or the same kind of filter that we would use with other people. And on the one hand, it's great to have that person, right? It's great to have that safe place to land. On the other hand, it's probably a good idea to try to check yourself sometimes.
It's true. I mean, I read this and I made some of the same, like I highlighted the exact same sentence that you just read and all that stuff. The one thing that I'm thinking though, like, well, so I'm trying to think of an example while you're talking. And I was thinking about like, okay, last year when we were going through the process of moving and selling everything and kind of like, you know, melting down our United States life and taking it elsewhere. And I was a basket case and like super stressed because it was this whole thing about selling the house and, all that. There was just so much to do. And so I was thinking about it and I was like, yeah, I probably wasn't super in tune with the fact that he was also going through like this epic life change at that time. And it was like because I'm an anxious person, it was like all about me and like how stressed and anxious I was. So I get that. But then at the same time, I feel like during that process, he was responsible for him. I was responsible for managing like the emotions of our kids who were all kind of going through this change with it and supporting them and answering their questions. And sometimes I didn't have answers to their questions because it was, changing and things were in limbo and all that. And then, so it was like emotionally, I had 4 times the amounts because it was like me plus the 3 kids. And then also logistically, right? It was like, who was responsible for getting the kids all sorted out as far as like, okay, this is the stuff you're taking with us here. This is the stuff that's going into storage. This is the stuff you're going to purge. And he literally like threw his shit from the closet into a box on the last day. And it was like, I did the entire rest of the house. So sometimes I feel like too, I'm like a little bit less compassionate in those situations because yes, we're both going through like this epic life change, but I'm still carrying more of it. Right. I feel like anyway, maybe he wouldn't see it that way. I don't know. Maybe I should ask him about that. But Debbie Reber would tell me I should ask him.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there are some good things in here. And I think depending on where you're at in your personal relationship with your parenting partner or your spouse or your significant other, right? Like different things are going to hit differently. There were definitely some things in here that I was like, "Meh." And this section was one of them. And so in this same section on the next page, she has a story about how they had this situation and she felt that she needed to have her son Asher's back and protect him from the way that her husband was handling something, right? And she is sharing this story with some new life coach that she's working with. And her life coach asked her, didn't her husband also deserve to be protected from her son? And for her, in that moment and in her story, it was like a light bulb moment for her. And she was like, oh, yes, I haven't been on my husband's team. I've only been on my child's team. And for me, I was like, new life coach, please. And check, done. Peace out. I think, on the one hand, I do kind of get that, right? Like we need to, the parents do need to be a team, right? You need to have each other's back. That's a huge part of like a successful relationship and partnership. But I do feel like as parents, right, it's our job to always protect our kids from other adults. To a lesser extent from other kids, like there's a whole thing going on there. I just can't think of any situation, scenario, event, circumstance where like you should not protect your kid from an adult. I just can't. And so like it doesn't matter. Even the adults that are supposed to be the safe adults, right? Like as the parent, it's your job to protect the child from other adults. And so yeah, I was like, I don't know about that.
Well, the adults should be coming to that with a fully developed frontal cortex of their brain and more life experience and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the kid is coming to it from a different perspective. So it's almost like grading on a curve. It's not, the scales are not even.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, to me, that's just the thing, right? Like you're the adult. You should just be the first one to apologize. You should be the first one to own up when you've messed up. You should take responsibility. You should be the first one to take responsibility. I struggled with that.
We've had this conversation in my house where I'll be going between kid and husband and the kid will be like, he did blah, 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 blah. And my husband will be like, well, he did blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, right. And he's, this was years ago, he's 8 and you're fucking grown up. So like, dude, seriously, So
Yeah.
yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. So yeah,
And
this section was
then,
a little hit and miss for me. Kind of like the next one. So the next one is called Design Your Alliance. And on page 212, she's got some questions. So she asks, how can you design an alliance with your partner to show up as your best, most united selves? What would your ideal alliance look like? And what are your individual concerns and your shared goals for the family? I thought that out of the whole design your alliance, those were the only really good things that came out of it. So I don't know if you've got something better.
yes, no, I did. It took me a second. I was trying to figure out where you were. Cause if you're new to the book club, I read on Kindle since I'm not in the US and I don't have access to English books. And Amanda has the actual book. And I was like, our page numbers didn't line up there. And I was like, where is she pulling this from? But I found it. No, I don't have anything from that section. My next note is in the section about implementing the daily check-in.
Yeah. I mean, basically, she's just talking about like your parenting partnership, whoever that's with, create an alliance, make it good, sort it out so you're both happy. I mean, good luck. Good luck to you. The next section, as Meagan said, is on implement the daily check in. So I will say that I agree that in general, this is probably a good idea. Generally speaking, it's great if you can check in with your parenting partner or your spouse or your significant other daily. For me, I hate that it always seems to be at the end of the day after the kids go to bed and you're done, especially for me with my health issues and how tired I am, chronic fatigue and all of that. By the end of the day, like I don't want to think about anything. I just want to be a vegetable until I'm ready to sleep. And it's just not a good time for me to connect or bond with anyone at all.
Sure.
I'm just done. And so while I think that the daily check in is good, right? I know in my own personal experience, we had one marriage therapist, marriage counselor who wanted us to do this nightly, but we couldn't include any parenting or like admin, like daily life stuff. We were supposed to be checking in as a couple. And it's kind of one of those things like, well, in theory, that's great, but you have to have time to also talk about all of the parenting and the stuff, right? Like, this bill needs to be paid. Is there enough money here? Can you move this? Like, oh, we have to drive to this thing. We have to get a gift for Aunt Sally. Like you have to be able to talk about all of those things. And if the only time you can carve out is 10 minutes at night after the kid goes to bed, like, come on now. That's like, I don't know. That's hard. And then I will say, we had another marriage therapist that we tried that wanted us to each give 20 minutes. So 40 minutes total every night where one person just got to vent and discuss their struggles of the day. And you were supposed to actively listen about whatever those were and then repeat back what they were and then take turns trading off. And I was like, I am so tired and I cannot listen to you vent 20 minutes every night about the same people at work and about the same thing. Like I can't, I'm done. Like 17 days in a row. I'm sorry that Aaron is a pain in your ass, And so yeah, I generally, I think a daily check-in is a great idea. I've never succeeded at doing it. So
Yeah. We've done check-in meetings, but not daily. Like I said, we're not even usually in the same state or country. So it's like, we talk every day and we text all day long. We have different combinations of family chat. So we're sending pictures back and forth and all that kind of stuff. But we more typically have he'll be traveling for like weeks on end for work, or the kids and I'll be traveling. And when we come back, there's kind of this coming together. Or I'll text him and say, I need 20 minutes of your time today uninterrupted because I need to bounce, like you said, like purchases or, scheduling commitments or, I've made a decision about XYZ for the kid. to do X, whatever. And we'll kind of just info dump on one another as far as like what we each have going on so that we're lined up, but they're not daily, that's for sure. But what I did really like of this was the idea of doing a 10-minute alignment with my kids each day, which I know was completely not the purpose of this tilt because I'm already super connected with my kids. But I've been struggling in teen land with the idea that I don't tuck them in anymore. Like that was always such a special time. But a lot of times they go to bed later than I do, or they'll be in bed reading and they just fall asleep or something. And so there isn't that closure to the end of every day. And so typically at the end of the day, I'm in my room/office, getting stuff done or whatever, or reading myself or whatever the case might be. And just to be able to be like, hey, at some point before you go, even 5 minutes, right? Like I'm not going to be greedy, right? Just like pop in for 5 minutes. And like, can we just put a bow on the day together? Do a little snuggle, do a hug goodnight, whatever. Because it is like hard when you've gone for years of tucking them in and then all of a sudden they just like disappear at the end of the day and you're like, where'd they go? So I kind of took that away from it, which was not the purpose of the tilt, but that's what I'm doing. I like it.
I get behind that. We used to always cuddle in my chair. I have a rocking chair kind of thing in the living room because I always used that with the foster babies that we had. It was really helpful. And kiddo would climb into the chair and we'd have a snuggle in the evening. And just the other day, I pulled him in for a snuggle and I was like, he doesn't fit in my lap in the chair anymore. He's had another big growth spurt. And it was that moment of like, oh my gosh, we had our last one, like the time it came and went and I missed it. Like, oh man, parenting. Sometimes parenting is hard. And it's the moments you weren't necessarily expecting.
Yeah.
All right. So each of these tilts always ends with a start now box. This particular one says, make a date with your partner to talk about your desire to parent from a place of respect and partnership and invite him or her to work with you to be a united team. Okay. I mean,
Okay.
yeah. I don't know the number of times I've had this talk and the number of times nothing has come out of it, but you can give it a try and see how it works. And
yeah, I mean, it works. If I have if I need support, I can ask for it. Generally speaking, I'm just kind of doing my thing with the kids and it works, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think part of it too, like maybe both of us just have very like old fashioned roles in the sense, like he works, I raise the kids, like and it wasn't like it was an intentional choice. It just kind of fell into that rhythm and it's working, I mean, it's fine. So, but yeah, I mean, we don't have this whole daily sync up of what I'm doing with the kids and how his work life is going and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing the shit. Maybe it's amazing, but who knows? It's more like a catch as catch can sort of situation sometimes, but it seems to be working. So we're okay. Okay. So we have one more tip to cover today, which is going to be exciting because it's about finding your people. And we always love that. But before we do that, just a quick reminder that we have a Patreon. We have several different membership levels from free, where you can just kind of come and stay in the know, to $5 a month, which is just kind of like a thanks for creating content. I love it. It's helpful. To higher levels that come with all sorts of really cool perks like themed unit studies and weekly live Zoom meetings. In fact, if you're listening to this when it very first drops, next week's live Zoom meeting is on Wednesday, May 21st. And it's just a general homeschool chat. So you can come, you can meet us, you can bring all your homeschool questions, or just come and be a fly on the wall and listen to other people's homeschool questions, because sometimes we talk about stuff that you're like, I didn't even know that was a thing. And now I do. So this is awesome. So yeah, we would love to welcome you. We work to keep Patreon as affordable as possible with as many perks as possible and just really build a nice sense of community over there. So we would love to welcome you. There will be a link to Patreon in our show notes below.
Yeah, totally. And that like Wednesday, like general homeschool chat, right? It's a great one to join for like the first time because a lot of folks join for like the general chat and you don't have to feel like you're coming in late or anything like that. It's a great one.
Yeah, we're a casual bunch. So come
so
on by. Come as you are. We do not judge. So just come and hang out with us. It'll be awesome.
For sure. All right. So we have one more tilt to talk about today. It is called, well, it's tilt 14, and it is called Find Your People and Ditch the Rest. And most of this chapters or units or whatever start with an opening quote. And I particularly liked this one. She says,
Me too.
stop planting flowers in people's yards who aren't going to water them. I was like, yes, that is a great visual.
Mhm. I did. I liked it. I wrote that down too and loved that quote. Okay, so I like that she starts this tilt with kind of a disclaimer. She says, before we dive into this is on 213, that same first page there. Before we dive into the complicated issues surrounding our relationships with others, let me just start by saying this is messy stuff. These issues are jumbled up with our own fragile egos, emotional baggage, and insecurities about our child not being okay. They also tie back to the fact that we are hardwired to crave acceptance, since our child is in many ways an extension of ourselves. Sensing that others find him or her unacceptable sparks our own vulnerability and defensiveness, and may lead to our reconsidering people we let into our world. We've talked about this with other stuff too. There's kind of this absolutism that people have adopted where it's hardcore one way or the other. And the reality is most of life is gray. And so it's like, yeah, okay, in an ideal world, that would be an easy decision. But sometimes there's nuance to it. There's little minutia that's in there that you really have to sift through to try to figure out what you're going to do. And it's not always super easy. So, if you're struggling with some of these things that we're going to talk about, there's nothing wrong with you. Some of this stuff is really tricky. So you're good.
Yeah. Relationships are hard. Relationship
Yes, right?
dynamics and all of that stuff. Yeah. Okay, so the first section is called The People Who Get It and the People Who Don't.
Yeah, and I loved the fact that this section starts off with a quote that says, one of the hardest parts about raising atypical kids is dealing with people who just don't get it. Right? And it's kind of that thing where it's like, do I take the time to explain this to you, or do I just let you judge me and I move on with my day? Because some people are never going to get it, no matter how much you try to explain it. And some people will listen and think you're nuts. And some people will listen and think you're a shit parent. Some people will totally get it. And so you have kind of this brief moments when you meet people to kind of tease that out really quick and try to figure out what's there. But yeah, it's tiring.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, the next thing, the quote that I have is just in the next paragraph down. She starts it with, here's the thing. Spending time with people who aren't our people is exhausting. And I was like, you could totally just leave it at that, right? Like that could be the entire quote. I was like, yes, amen. That could be the entire section. It's exhausting. Next. But she does go on to say, and when we are raising kids who lie outside the window of normal, we don't really have the time or energy to help people who are never going to get it. And I feel like in large part, that's just kind of one of those like permission things, right? Like we're giving you permission. This book is giving you permission to stop trying to convince people to get it, to care enough to get it, right? Like if you've tried and they just don't want to get it, just don't waste your energy there. Don't let them suck up your back. Don't let them suck up your time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Then we both have quotes on 216, but I think yours comes up first. But again, I'm in Kindle land where it's all out of sync. But I think you're first.
Okay, so I have just pulled out. She says, "How do we balance familial obligations with protecting our kids? Is it possible to have a respectful relationship with our extended family, even if they don't appreciate who our children are?" And again, Meagan started out by saying this is really complicated. And if you're trying to navigate this, good luck to you. For me, I'm like not really open to this. I personally, for a wide variety of reasons, have a lot of toxic family relationships that I have let go over the years. So for me, it's a bit of a no-brainer that I would do this for my kid. If you can't respect my kid and exactly who they are, if you can't respect my partner, my spouse for exactly who they are, their ethnicity or whatever that may be, like, that's fine. You get to make your decision, but I also get to make my decision. Peace out.
Mhm.
See you later. Don't let the door hit you in the ass.
I think that's true. But I think with this, and then there was also something that I kind of flagged later as well about just kind of like letting go of stuff that doesn't serve you. I think so much that comes with age too, right? Like you said, like you've worked on this over time and whatever. And I think both of us are in our mid 40s, I think. And I think part of that just comes with age too, where you're like, I don't freaking have the time or the energy for this. Like whatever, you get more confident and all of that. So I could see where somebody who's on that journey, but not quite there yet would still struggle and be like, oh, but it's my sister or my mother or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but if we could just like time machine you forward a little bit, I think hopefully you'll be at the point too where you're like, no, not happening. So
Yeah. Not worth it.
yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, the last quote that I pulled here kind of highlights that, I think, as well, or kind of reinforces what you were saying, where she says, in any of these situations, we need to get to the center, which is us, the mom or the dad, and start there, doing whatever we need to do for self-care. Part of that self-care is taking care of those feelings like anger or sadness or grief that come up. And then from there, the next ring is your child. So she's picturing kind of like a bullseye situation, right? The next ring is your child and knowing, okay, this is who my child is. And I know that better than anybody else. And I start there because from there, from that center, there you can create sort of a shield. And the more comfortable and confident that you are, the less you care about what other people think. And so I was like, yes, I think that's true. And I think it has to do with and I think that works well in conversation about raising differently wired kids. But I also think it can do with other things too. Like we did an episode on like dealing with homeschool backlash, right? And people who are questioning your decision to homeschool and telling you you're going to screw up your kids and you're going to suck at it and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's kind of that same thing too, right? Is like go in your little turtle shell and really get super duper comfortable with what your decision is. And then when you come out of there, it's like, nope, this is what we're doing. And it's on up for discussion. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Yeah. No, totally. Yep.
And when that doesn't work, you can go to the next section, which is called tightening up your circle.
Yes. I found it interesting. She's talking about doing this. She actually called it decluttering your relationships. I thought that was an interesting way of putting it, especially given how like trendy decluttering is right now.
Does this spark joy? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a sparking joy for the most part person, but the idea is keep those people close who fill you up and provide a reciprocal relationship. And for the author, this naturally happened when she moved abroad. I've been there, done that. I know how that works. For me personally, right now in life, now in 2025, I feel like the pandemic did this for me without too much effort on my part. It did a really great job of kind of like weeding out the people that you were kind of keeping around, but maybe were not the best use of your time and energy.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. And I think the fact that the pandemic also lined up with the 2020 election, it was a double whammy. Like if the pandemic didn't clear out your Facebook friends list and earn quite a few blocks, election season 2020 certainly did. So, and then January 6th rolled around and it was like the final clean sweep, right? So it was like, yeah, it was a pretty straightforward way to really take out the scalpel and kind of slice away at some of the people that did not need to be in your world, which I thought was pretty helpful at my end as well. There was a thing here. So she's got a checklist in this section with questions about like, does this relationship bring meaning and joy to your life? And does this person accept and appreciate your child and all of that? But there was one here that was like, do you feel free to be your authentic self when hanging out with this person? And I don't know. Again, I think it's that age and confidence thing, right? But I'm like, I just am who I am. And if that's not your cup of tea because I'm too sarcastic or too whatever, or I say fuck too often, then that's fine. You are more than willing to exit stage left. I just am who I am. I don't have the energy to to pretend to be something else to make you happy. I'd rather actually just kind of go in as who I am and figure out who's going to stick around, as opposed to molding myself to a different situation and then later having to extricate myself because I've gotten myself somewhere that doesn't make sense for me to be. So yeah, I'm like, if we have a conversation, I'm going to say fuck, and I'm going to tell you that I fled the US because I think fascism is on the rise. And I'm going to tell you my pelvic floor is like tissue paper. And like, you're going to know real quick who I am and what I'm all about.
Okay. So the next section is be okay with what you feel. This one made me laugh a little because it went back to that like grieving and whatever. And I was like, oh, Meagan loved that language the first 2 times it came up in the book. Let's rehash it a third. But she's talking about the fact that the reality is sometimes you or your kiddo will get left out of things. Like that idea, like when the birthday party invites start tapering off, or you're always inviting their kid over, but your kiddo's not invited over to their house, or those kinds of things. And she just says, quote, be kind to the part of yourself that's feeling hurt or left out. It's okay and normal to feel this way. As with all tough emotions we face in our parenting journey, the key is to acknowledge the feeling, allow it to express itself, and then move on. And, we talk about that all the time. Just on Tuesday's episode, we talked about panicking and then don't panic. Just this idea, like that first emotion, that first feeling, it's real, it's valid. There's nothing wrong with it. But, does it really serve you and the way that you move forward? Probably not. And so, just nothing. It's okay to feel what you feel, but then it's also just as important to decide how you're going to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I see
absolutely.
in Facebook groups like all the time where that's where the moms get really hung up, the moving forward. I don't know if I'm always like, this person has to be like 23 and just like not at all ready to like, it's okay. Like you can feel all of these feelings, but you probably didn't need to come and write out the whole story and ask 5,000 other women what they would do. You just move on.
Yeah. Sometimes it's helpful though for somebody to like give you that permission, if you're really struggling, and even if it's like strangers on the internet, and then they're like, it's okay for you to do this thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, these people told me it was okay. Like people are complicated as hell, and it's like, sometimes that's just the little bit that it takes.
It's true.
It's interesting, but if that's what it takes, come, we'll tell you to move on. We're good at that. Come hang out with us. We'll be like, screw them, move on. You'll be better off without them. Easy.
True
We've got
story.
you covered. All right. The next note that I have is, Kindle pages. Okay. In this section called Find Your People. And there was a quote here that I just thought was pretty basic. It's towards the end. And it says, the only requirement for who, quote unquote, our people are is that they love and appreciate our kids. Full stop. That's a pretty, because if you love and appreciate my kids, then you are good people. Kind of like when they say, like, if a dog doesn't like somebody, you should really listen to that feedback from a dog because they're the greatest judge of character. And so it's like, it's a pretty clean cut criteria. Do you love and appreciate my kids? No problem. You're in. You can stay. Everybody else, out you go.
Yeah. I mean, but I think that's one of those things. It's great advice. It's really concise and to the point, and yet also really freaking hard to implement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like that thing of like in reality, in the things that you're doing and in life, I can only imagine that so often it's like, well, but, or, like this kiddo has a great relationship with this person and that person is not good with my other kiddo. So do I cut them out because they're not good with the other kiddo? And like, it's just that thing. I think there's so many, it's great, right? At its core, it's great, but it's complicated.
And
we
all
started
that
out
gray
talking about-
area.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
messy. relationships and people. It's messy and it's hard, and navigating it is not easy and straightforward. And we're not going to sit here and pretend like we have it all figured out and all together. I
Yeah,
haven't
that
talked
is
to my
true.
mother-in-law in years. Like, we don't have it all figured out.
I haven't talked to my mother-in-law in years either. It's been great. Yeah, don't mind that. My husband doesn't talk to her either, so that makes it a little bit more clean cut. So it's a little more challenging if you're like
That's it.
in the mix.
That makes it much easier. My
Yeah.
husband goes and sees her several times a year, and we don't speak to each other, so it's complicated. Get messy.
Yeah, we don't. I don't have that, so that makes life a little easier. Okay, the next thing we've got is the section called Create Safe Relationships for Your Child Too. And this is just my pet peeve, right? There's a thing here that says, once on a recent outing, a tour guide pressured Amelia, this person's daughter, to speak up, saying, "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue?" And one of Amelia's friends stood up for her and said, "This is Amelia. She has anxiety. She needs about 45 minutes to warm up." And I just left that, but I'm just like, listen, I know society is the constant evolution, but I'm just like so done with the older people who don't understand. Like, why do you need to say that to someone? Cat got your tongue? Like, you need that person to talk. You need this like 10-year-old girl to talk to you to validate your existence as a tour guide. Like, dude, she's doing her thing. Like, it's her, right? We talked about it in another episode. I don't remember which one, but it's that same thing that like every October when Halloween is rolling around, there's those things that roll around that online that's like, the kid who doesn't say thank you might have speech issues, or the kid without a costume might have sensory issues. Like, just be kind and give them candy. And I'm like, I can't believe we have to tell grown freaking adults to be kind to kids and give them candy on Halloween because they're like qualifying who gets a candy. Like, and I get it. They didn't have this understanding of neurodivergence and in the older generations and stuff like that. But I talked about it in last week's episode. We went on a tour and my autistic kiddo had his noise canceling headphones on, and the guy was like making like asshole remarks about him not being able to hear him. And I was like, dude, like seriously, I'm like, he's here on a tour. Like, he's doing his thing. He's doing the best that he can. And like, knock it off. So I saw that and I was just like, yes, just with the, anyway.
Like, you're going to get paid no matter what. And your tip is going to go down with every snarky comment you make to my kids. So not very smart.
Exactly. Right. And that was a tour through Airbnb, and Airbnb has a rock solid disability policy. So like, don't be an asshole. Okay.
Yeah. Right. I thought this, like, the whole idea that there's a section called Create Safe Relationships for Your Child Too. I was like, really? Like, I mean, no, just make sure you've got, oh yeah, don't forget. Also make sure that they're safe for your kiddo as well. Like, oh, okay. So the next section was called Find Your Water Holes. First off, I just really struggled with this. I just kept wanting to call it a watering hole. The fact that it's water holes really threw me off. And I was trying to dictate my notes, and it was a whole thing. But on page 223, she starts by telling this story about watching footage. It was in a documentary of a water hole in the Kalahari Desert, and how in the middle of the night, animals come from far and wide to use this water hole. And there's some socialization and stuff of all these different types of animals. And for me, I just thought it was a really nice visual, like that story. I don't know, having been on an African safari, and I was like, oh, that's so nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I liked it. And so basically that whole section is just where can you go to look for your people? So she's got her group, her Tilt parenting group. We have our group, Homeschool Moms Unfiltered, for trying to find Facebook groups or community groups and stuff like that. So it was just basically like lifting up rocks to try to figure out where your people are hiding. And once you find them, sort of stick a toe in and see what you can do is, see if they really are your people. So that's basically what the concept was.
Yeah, that's it. And I think we talk a lot about finding your people, and sometimes we probably make it seem easy. And the reality is it's not always easy. And a lot of times you'll go to a group that should be the perfect space and it's just not. Like sometime last year, one of my doctors really encouraged me to check out this local long COVID support group for people with long COVID, obviously. And I was like, okay, let me see how it goes. And the people in the group were all perfectly nice people. But every gathering was like raging against the fact that they had long COVID. And I was like, this for me is exhausting. I'm not happy about it. I don't love what's happening with my life. I don't like the changes that I've had to make, but I need to just find a way to be like, well, these are the changes I have to make, and this is how I'm making them, right? Like these are the adaptations that I've made. These are the accommodations that I'm putting in place. This is how I'm making it work. And these folks were not there yet. And I had really hoped to find a group of people who were there because it's tricky. There are a lot of accommodation and adaptations and things like, the doctors, they just don't know much yet. They're like over 200 things that symptoms you can have and stuff. And they don't know how to treat the main thing. It's just like, oh, well, you could try this for this thing and you could try this for this thing. And I was really hoping to find like just regular people to talk with. It wasn't the right group. And I stuck around longer than I should have because I wanted to make it work. At the end of the day, when it doesn't work, like just that thing, you don't have the energy to put into things that don't work. Use your energy carefully.
True story. Okay, so like all the tilt, this one ends with a start now box, which is just kind of like a little bite-sized nibble that you can do to start putting this particular tilt and the suggestions with this tilt into action. So she says, reflect on the people with whom you most regularly interact and identify relationships in which the other person doesn't respect or validate your parenting reality. Make a conscious plan for protecting yourself in that relationship. Seems like solid advice.
Yeah. And hopefully not a huge lift. Hopefully you don't have so many of them in your life that it's a massive lift.
Like, I'm going to need a new notebook for this. Yeah.
Look, a bad day. Oh. All right. So did you find this episode particularly helpful? Like this book specifically, or this specific episode about parenting partners and really tightening up your circle of people? Maybe some of the stuff that we discussed will spark some really productive conversations between you and your parenting partner, your spouse, or an extended family member. If so, send them a link to the episode. Or maybe you have a friend that you think this will really resonate with. We probably all have a friend who this will really resonate with. Go ahead, forward the show to them. Truly, word of mouth is the best way for us to grow this awesome community of like-minded caregivers and homeschoolers. So we just really appreciate you letting other people know about us.
I'm laughing when you're like, send it to a friend. Because Vouch would be like, in case you were wondering why we're not really friends anymore.
I was thinking more like, I know you've really been struggling with your sister-in-law. This might help.
I totally knew that's what you meant. But I went 3:30 in the morning for me now, and I went completely the other direction. And I was like, this is why we're breaking up. Have a great day.
I mean, you could go that route.
I don't think those people would give us good reviews, though, so let's not go that route. Like, it was like that episode of Sex and the City, like, I got dumped on a Post-it, and somebody be like, I got dumped in a podcast. Don't do that. Okay. So, we hope this episode was helpful. I can't. We hope this episode was helpful. And like Amanda said, we are almost done with this book that we've been reading forever. But there's just such a huge percentage of people parenting and homeschooling neurodivergent kiddos in our community that it seems wise to take the time and really dissect what's in here and learn from it. So that's what we've been doing. So we hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next week with some more. But in the meantime, happy homeschooling.
Yeah, have a great one.